We have another great Pemba On Demand show for you today. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Camilo R. Gomez and Christopher Voss. Camilo and Chris have just released a book, Strategic Conversations. You will discover details about their unique collaboration, incorporating negotiation techniques Chris learned as a hostage negotiator for the FBI, applying them to healthcare, and creating a framework that creates the win-win we all strive for. Stay with us. This is going to be another powerful conversation. Welcome to Pemba On Demand, Physician Leaders Making a Difference. I'm Norm Chapin, your host. Pemba On Demand is produced for physicians seeking professional development. We discuss a wide range of topics on the podcast, including successful innovations in a variety of healthcare disciplines, current issues in healthcare career development, and healthcare leadership. I will be interviewing physician leaders from the U.S. and from other countries, most of whom graduated from the Physician Executive MBA program at the University of Tennessee. The information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the University of Tennessee or any other organization. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree to these terms. Whether you're sipping your morning coffee, commuting to the hospital, or just looking for a dose of inspiration, we've got you covered. We hope you will take full advantage of these practical, insightful, and relevant discussions designed to help physician leaders get new and build upon existing leadership skills and perspectives. Pemba On Demand will allow you to be an even bigger force for good in healthcare. Well, Chris and Camilo, it's great to have you on the show today. I appreciate you guest appearing on Pemba On Demand.
It's a pleasure. It's a privilege to be here. Happy to be here. Spread more good karma in the universe.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here. As a Pemba graduate, I love this whole process, and I'm very, very grateful to Chris for spending some time with us because he has a wealth of knowledge.
Well, I'm looking forward to learning from both of you today and for what you can share with our audience. So maybe you could take us back to day one. And what was the first conversation that the two of you had that made you think of co-creating a book, Strategic Conversations?
From my point of view, I think this is Chris's project. As I said earlier, I just piggybacked myself into it because the opportunity came across. I had already known Chris from before. A little story that most people don't know, and I don't think Chris remembers, but he and I met very briefly when he was still at the Bureau in the early 2000s, when I went to take a course that had nothing to do with him. And then it was nowhere in my radar screen until his book came around years ago, and I read his book, Never Split the Difference, and it was fairly transformative. So I then went ahead and took a couple of courses with him, and then the opportunity of the book came around. And Chris, now I'll let you take over the book itself. The opportunity came, and I just latched myself to it because of my interest in what he has to teach and how it applies to medicine, and we can go over that in a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, really, great thing about the alignment of core value. And, what do you really believe in? Who are you really? And a close friend of mine, Jonathan Smith, once told me that all your relationships will succeed or fail based on alignment of core values or misalignment, like all, ALL, family members, significant others, friends, business colleagues. And then when your core values really line up, you believe in the same things, you just feel like you always know them. And I feel like I always knew Camilo. We just have lined up so well in what we believe in, which is the world is basically good. People are basically good. They need nudges in the right directions. Leadership sometimes guiding, leading, discovering, principally through the application of empathy, understanding, and, just having a cliche term, a good heart, believing in humanity. And yeah, he and I it feels like I've always known him.
Yeah, it's very interesting because when I started looking at Never Split the Difference, and then I met Chris, I went to his courses, as I said, it was transformative. And the reason, so I said, why is this hitting me so hard? And I think Chris and I have talked about this in the past. What I thought is that in medicine, and this is what I wrote in the chapter in our book, is that in medicine, we are not really taught empathy. We it's not part of the curriculum. The negotiation skills are not there as part of what is taught. That we are taught to debate, to prevail by you have more knowledge than the other person. And that sometimes doesn't really lead to the best outcomes necessarily. So that's what I found transformative. And what I thought would be, how is it that we can incorporate this as a medical educator? How can we incorporate this both to the medical practice and to the business of practice, which is they're intertwined to some degree. And then the book chapter, the possibility of writing the book came around, and I said, wow, that's a good way for me to start, for me to discover myself. How does that fit into my perspective about medicine, both as a profession and as a business?
The book, Never Split the Difference, I think came out in 2015 or 2016, Chris?
2016. We're coming up on a 10-year anniversary. Next May will be 10 years.
Okay. Because I didn't discover it until a couple years ago, but I agree with Camilo that it was a very transformative read. I've been doing the business of medicine now for 15 years, and we went to the same MBA program at the University of Tennessee, which is how Camilo and I got connected. But I had a very different view of what negotiation is and how to win. And Camilo, when I read your chapter in the book, I agree. I realized that my mindset up until the time I read the book was that it's really a competition, and it's really about who can prevail with greater knowledge or using tactics that are very different than what you described in Never Split the Difference. And I've used that so much since I read it. I really appreciate the content in that book.
The techniques that the Black Swan Group and Chris teaches is like being a Jedi Knight. I mean, it's like a mind trick. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, when you start using them, it's just, it's transformative. There are certain expressions that they teach, that he teaches, that I cannot speak without using that form. And it just becomes a habit. And then you don't want to do it any other way.
So, Chris.
Yeah, because it works. That's the crazy thing. And it's a little bit is, what's your addiction? As we're sitting here talking about it, I try to think about the people that it appeals to. If you're addicted to applause, then you want to beat other people. But if you want to succeed, if you want to be as good as you possibly can be, you're addicted a little bit more to quiet achievement, to getting to where you need to go. Because the more applause you get, the more jealous other people get. And the more other people feel like they've lost. And you don't need that. That ultimately holds you back. What you need is great collaboration. And so you're a little bit, you're ambitious with ethics, which is not the same as being competitive, because if you're competitive, you got to beat people and you need applause. And if you have a need for applause, then your actual achievement in life will be very limited.
You're absolutely right. And I think that the priorities of how we can all go together forward farther as a group, as opposed to the me aspect of the whole thing, is critical. But some of what Chris just said just comes to mind. If you look at the special forces in the Army, they are known as the quiet professionals. They're not people who just make explosions or anything like that. And when I was in Quantico back in the early 2000s, I had been invited because I was a tactical medical officer. And the interesting thing about it is that on the tactical side, there's always, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but there's always, I sense, a conflict with the negotiators, because the tactical commander always they want to breach, they want to go forward, they want to move forward, and they don't realize that there's a timing for everything. So that's the perspective that I brought, being in the Army, tactical medical officer, et cetera, et cetera. And then I read the book and I said, wait a minute, we've been missing a whole world of an approach to getting success before we even pull a gun out of the holster.
When you guys collaborated on the book, Strategic Conversations, who was the primary audience that you had in mind?
I think largely what we're circling around here is cliche. People who want to do good, but not at other people's expense. Like you're collaborative, you're ethical, and you're ambitious. Because to be ambitious is to be innovative. But you need ethics. We know a lot. Everybody knows about the ambitious people that have no ethics whatsoever. And you get the Elizabeth Theranos and somebody out there who's claiming to be able to do stuff when they're deceiving and falsifying what they're doing because they become so ambitious, but they violate their ethics. Ambition is fun and it's collaborative, and it's even better when you're ethical, because then ultimately you haven't lied to everybody. So you're collaborative, you're ambitious, you're entrepreneurial by definition. You're a little bit of a maverick. You know, the entrepreneurs, they don't want to be constrained by rules. They want rules or standard, and you don't achieve greater things being standard. So ambitious, ethical, collaborative, entrepreneurial people.
So I'm getting a sense that it's not really focused on a specific industry, but more on a specific type of leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like
right.
a Zen. Yeah, it's like a Zen way of life. Very interesting. When you may relate to this, Norm, that's when I went to business school in University of Tennessee. One of the things that I liked about our program so much is the emphasis on ethical rules in business, which I'm telling you, I see them out there breached on a daily basis. The whole idea that Jim Collins advanced years ago, that you don't concentrate on the revenue, you concentrate on the quality. If you have a quality product, the revenue will come by itself. If you're so busy with the revenue, your revenue is not going to last because your quality is going to suffer sooner or later. And I think that's the critical aspect, that we've been missing that in medicine. And I think some of the ideas that we want to try to introduce, that I've been trying to introduce for the last 2-3 years since I've been working with Chris and so on, is how to introduce some of these concepts to the teaching of medicine. One of the most intriguing things that I've learned from Chris Voss and his group is a concept that I use almost on a daily basis with our residents, which is curiosity is a superpower. And that is huge in medicine, because we are deficient in medical education in creating critical thinking individuals. We are creating individuals who we want them to follow guidelines, and they don't want to inquire. And I've been practicing medicine for 45 years, and I still look things up on a daily basis because my curiosity is boundless. And that's what I try to tell them. Be curious, find out what's behind the patient's symptoms, what produce what, how do they get them to you? And that's important. I'm telling you, it's all there in his courses.
Well, I'm interested to know, what was the first course that you took from Chris and his team, and why? I
don't remember. I mean, I think it was an online course. It was one of the online sessions. And then I took a course. The first one that I actually went, where I have a picture. If you look back in my office, there's a picture of Chris and I over there that I have in my office. You can see it, both of us over there. That's a picture from a course that he gave in Washington, D.C., that was in the Spy Museum. That was a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, whatever it was. And again, I said, I want to immerse myself in this whole theory and see what happens. And I came out it was like a baptism of negotiation, intellectual catharsis, so to speak. And that's how then the book came in front of me, and I said, absolutely, I'm in. I originally wanted to do is to write an entire book. I wanted to see if I can twist his arm to write an entire book on negotiation in medicine, just in medicine, just because I think there's an audience out there that may benefit from this. Frankly, I think that our business school in the University of Tennessee, they have the only MBA program strictly for physicians. So all of our classmates were always physicians, every class of every year. I think that we had to try to convince them to incorporate somehow Chris and his group into the teaching sessions on how they generate, because I think the MBA program would benefit from that.
You said this is at Tennessee?
The University of Tennessee, Knoxville, yes.
So I have to learn how to sing Rocky Top if I go? Do we got to learn?
Well, you could, but I'm not sure. I don't even know how to speak Rocky Top, but I still go balls.
It would be a negotiation tactic that would be helpful, I think. I'm not saying it's mandatory, but if you showed up in a bright orange suit, singing Rocky Top, I think it would be a no-brainer for that.
Yeah. Get right in the door. Huh? All right. Yeah. Automatic admission.
Yeah. This podcast is sponsored by the Physician Executive MBA program at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville's Haslam College of Business. In less than 1 calendar year, this program will equip you with valuable business acumen and leadership development not found in traditional medical school curriculum. Are you ready to join the longest-running physician-only MBA program in the country and a network of nearly 1,000 Pemba graduates? Visit tiny.utk.edu/POD podcast for information about this exciting opportunity. And now we'll return to the episode. So Chris, maybe you could tell me Camilo obviously attended some of your trainings. Do you find that you have many physicians who are attending your trainings?
Overall, probably less than what we would like. There are certain professions that seem to have such external pressure on them to know everything that I think it's difficult for them the etiquette. Do you want to go out and demonstrate that you need to learn? And it sounds very counterintuitive. But the professionals that we hold in such high esteem, doctors and lawyers, it feels like now we're gaining traction more and more with them on a regular basis as more doctors are visibly seen to actually be practicing empathy. A guy like some people like Camilo, they're setting the tone where for other doctors, like we can actually admit that we have a lot to learn and we can still be the top professionals we are. So unfortunately, I think there's a societal pressure on doctors and lawyers to know it all, that it really takes a courageous professional to get out there and publicly learn soft skills.
Yeah.
That's very interesting that you say that. I hadn't realized that perspective. There's an old saying among the special forces, tier 1 operators is, you're never too junior to be right, and you're never too senior to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, if we take that to heart, I think I would think that people at my level who are unwilling to learn new dimensions, their brain will become stagnant. It's just, they're not going to progress. They're going to live in the past, and the past is no longer the present or the future for that matter. So it's fun. I tell you another thing about it. We don't talk too much about empathy by virtue of how it is taught by the Black Swan Group. It's a lot of fun. You can have a lot of intellectual fun in your conversations and in your communications. And it comes, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but it comes a point where if you use it enough, sometimes you can predict how they're going to respond before they themselves do so. Because you know where you're headed, because you've been through that road before.
Right. Yeah. It's
interesting.
It's fun when you can predict, when you know the next few moments in advance. It's a lot of fun.
So do you have a sense, one of the things as I talk to physician executives, I think many of them currently have the same operating system that Camilo and I had before we were exposed to your book, Never Split the Difference. I used it all the time, just getting to yes, figuring out how to win a debate. But do you have a sense of a common leadership conversation that physicians get trapped into with the wrong mindset? And how can that be re-scripted by your training and by the book, Strategic Conversations, or Never Split the Difference for that matter?
Camilo, I'll let you jump in there because I know you've got a lot more experience in this area than I do.
Well, I think that the problem that we face is that knowledge and the acquisition of knowledge is a little bit like rehabilitating an addict. Until that person realizes that they have a gap that they need to fill and they're willing to do so, you can only lead a horse to water. And it's easy to get stagnant and to follow the crowd and follow the things and don't think out of the box. And it's easy to think, to shortchange yourself and say, hey, I'm too old to do so. You're never too old to learn. That's not true. I learn every day. And this is what I tell people, learn one thing every day. I think that the other thing that is interestingly, we shortchange ourselves. Chris, I want to talk a little bit about this and see what you think. One of the things that we're doing in our business is I'm becoming a registered keynote speaker. And one of the things that I want to talk about in some of my talks that I try to tell them is that I'm drawing from my 45 years of clinical experience making life or death decisions on a moment-to-moment basis. Just like the negotiator is making decisions on life or death, when it never split the difference, you say, negotiate as if your life depends on it. Well, somebody's life always depends on it some way. It's either not the life or the livelihood or some other component. I think that we have failed to harness that experience of a physician to then apply it on the business aspect of medicine, saying, what is the decision that we need to make here? Let's see clearly through all of this, as opposed to just following in the footsteps of people that may not have the information correctly. When Chris interviewed me on his show, That's Right, one of the things that I mentioned was the story of that if you torture numbers, the numbers will confess. So in the era where everybody's talking about evidence-based medicine, the problem is that what people are calling evidence and the data, if they're not acquired correctly, it's going to lead you into the wrong direction. So there's an aspect of this that requires critical thinking. And then the empathy, to me, is how do I take my clarity of thought on a problem and convince people or allow them to be convinced that this path or that path is the best one? It's like, I think I've heard this somewhere, that negotiating is letting other people get away with your own thinking, so to speak.
Well, one of the things that I'm not sure everybody understands, and Chris, maybe you could the concept of tactical empathy was a new combination of words for me when I read the book. Could you explain a little bit about what tactical empathy is from practical perspective?
Yeah, well, there's kind of two practical reasons for putting the word tactical in front of empathy. First of all, it was empathy is not agreement, it's not sympathy, it's not compassion. It's become synonymous in daily usage. If I empathize with you, then that means feel what you feel. I'm on your side. Sympathy and compassion. Empathy is a precursor to compassion. It's very difficult. It's a compassionate thing to do. Stephen Kotler once wrote, and I'm a big fan of Stephen Kotler, his stuff, The Rise of Superman and Stealing Fire, both worth reading. Stephen once wrote, empathy is a transmission of information. Compassion is the reaction to that transmission. So empathy in its purest form is a demonstration of understanding, not agreement, not disagreement, thoroughly neutral. And in today's application, it's not listed as neutral. Oh, I got empathy for the Palestinians. Typically means you agree with them. Or I get empathy for the Israelis. Typically means you agree with them. That's not what it was originally. Originally, it was simply the demonstration of understanding. Mm-hmm. And so to make it a less soft, warm, and fuzzy, let me give you a hug term, we put tactical in front of it. The same way I like to joke, you can't teach a Navy SEAL yoga breathing, but if you tell them it's tactical breathing, they'll do it. It makes it a much more approachable word.
Gotcha.
If you're scared of being soft.
Yeah.
And so when we first wrote the book, there wasn't that much neuroscience available. A lot of what we know about neuroscience as a solid science is very recent information, or certainly since we drafted the book. The reaction of neurochemicals. Now I know from scientific experiments that the application of empathy follows neuroscience rules. And there's a lot of scientific data to show the effectiveness of empathy. If I demonstrate understanding to you, if I make you feel understood, then it's going to trigger neurochemicals in your system. It's going to make you more persuadable and more honest with and more collaborative. So it was originally designed just to make empathy a more approachable word. And in point of fact, we've come to find out it's the neuroscience-based application of emotional intelligence.
It's a brilliant concept, I'm telling you. It's a brilliant concept. Unbelievable.
And is that the first step when you are trying to get to a situation where you successfully complete a negotiation? Is that where you have negotiators start, or is there a different point in the interaction between two people where your method focuses first?
Now, your opening move should be empathy, some application of it. Going to be guided a little bit by the circumstances. Like, am I completely self-effacing from the beginning, which is empathy? Hey, I probably look like an idiot to you. Well, if I do look like an idiot to you, it's for me to say that is pure empathy. I never said I was an idiot. I never said I agreed that I was an idiot. I'm smart enough to realize that based on the circumstances and how we came together, to you, I look like an idiot. So if I say, hey, man, look, I probably look like somebody that would never understand you in 1,000 years. That's pure empathy. And that could be your starting point. Business interaction.
Okay.
At some point in time, the business person is going to say to themselves, why am I wasting my time with you? You can predict that moment in advance, what Camilla was talking about before, predicting the future. If it's eminently predictable that you're going to wonder whether or not you're wasting your time with me, I'll say that up front. Look, there's going to come a point in time in this conversation where you're going to wonder whether you should be talking to me at all. That's empathy. And so, physician, how would you apply that? I probably look like every physician that comes walking in here thinking of you just as a non-entity, just as a name on a chart, a number, and you're going to feel like that I treat you the way I treat everybody else. Because a lot of physicians unintentionally, to protect themselves emotionally, as Camilla said earlier, you're making life and death decisions on a regular basis as a physician, which means some of these people are going to die. And that can be traumatic to try to save a life and have it be lost to you. And so physicians put walls up around themselves to try to protect themselves emotionally. That's so they can continue to do their job. How does that come off to the other side? Like a cyborg. You got a big wall up around you. You're trying to protect yourself emotionally. I can't appreciate that because my dad's dying. My dad's dying of cancer. And you can walk in and repeat a speech to me that I heard you say word for word the day before to somebody else. As someone you're serving, it's very hard for me to see that. So you will instantly break that down if you begin to just simply express in advance what it looks like to the other person.
Interesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I wonder, and Camille, this may resonate with you as well, but there's an interesting level of resentment sometimes between physicians or clinician groups and hospital administrators or clinic administrators. And I'm interested, as I was listening to you talk about tactical empathy, and Camilo, I'd be interested in your opinion, because in your chapter in the book, you kind of wrote about an experience where the administration in an organization was facing a decision that was going to negatively impact either you or another physician leader they were bringing into the organization.
Yeah. Again, and what I write in my chapter is very true, is that I wish I knew then what I know now. I would have approached it differently. It became a confrontation that led to me resigning, leaving the university, going someplace else. And the interesting thing about it, although history has proved me right, at the end of the day, today, I was right. That was not necessarily the right way to approach it.
Yeah,
and it ended up costing me, some degree of emotional distress. I remember distinctly, I'm telling you, I remember distinctly standing on the Atlanta airport in between flights, having resigned my position, not having another job, and just standing there and say, what have you done? I had a tenured associate professor position. I did not have to leave. I could have sat there and write papers for the rest of my life and do nothing more. But it was too important. But I just did not know how to negotiate in a way to allow them to convince themselves that this was a worthy project that would benefit them as much as it would benefit me. And that's the part that didn't have the skills. And interestingly enough, fast forward to last week, one of the most recent discoveries I made about tactical empathy, how it's taught by Chris Voss and company, is that actually you can use it with psychiatric, very deranged people. I had a patient that had a psychiatric problem in the ward, patient I had operated on Wednesday. And on Thursday, I walked into the intensive care unit and she was surrounded by people ready to commit her securities and so on. And I started talking to her and said, I said something like, well, it sounds that you have something that you need to tell us. And it started at opening with that. And she said, how do you figure? I said, well, it sounds to me that you have something that you want to tell us that we're not doing right. Why don't you tell me about it? And slowly de-escalated the situation until she and I sat down, we talked a little bit, and it was very productive. But had we not done that, she would have been in a straitjacket in about 10 more minutes.
What was the reaction of the team to the change in that situation?
It was variable. It was, some people realized that, yeah, we're moving in the right direction. Other people were essentially, to be quite honest with you, some people felt that I had interfered with what they perceived to be their role at the time, because we live in a culture in medicine that is that's another conversation for another day, and probably a little bit more alcohol or bourbon, but it worked. The point is that in general, it served the purpose of helping the patient, which is at the end of what we want to do.
It's interesting that you find applicability for patient interactions or for interactions between colleagues and even between administration and physicians, it sounds like that what
I
you've
think
learned is valuable in those
yeah,
situations.
I believe the thing that I said earlier about curiosity is important. I do not start a conversation with a patient or in a meeting or anywhere when it says, okay, tell me how I can be of service to you. Tell me what is it that you have in mind, or what is your understanding to the patients, to the families? What is your understanding of what's going on with you? Tell me your side of the story. People want to be heard. And once you hear them, it's much easier to craft your responses. But you got to hear them first.
So, Chris, you've done master classes and your podcast. You've got a lot of leadership trainings out there. Have you ever designed a master class that would specifically be for physicians who are in leadership positions?
Not as of yet. Would certainly be open to that sort of tailoring, but yeah, be happy to.
Do you think that there would be any major differences between the training that you normally provide and the agenda for a master class that would be focused on physician leaders? Or do you feel that this content is valuable without making those modifications?
Well, I wouldn't use the term major. I mean, frequently there are subtle changes that we need to make to the wording to make it jump out more quickly, to make the information more accessible to whatever audience we're talking to. Every group has an unofficial vernacular, for the difficult human being in particular, person hard to get through. Some people call them PETAs, pain in the ass. We borrow the term from Joe Polish, half, hard, annoying, lame, and frustrating. And there's an unofficial vernacular in every profession. And it's frequently very helpful because we're simply talking about human nature concept. But my PETA is your half, is your whatever term you have. If we can tailor into the vernacular of the profession, the people in the profession pick it up more quickly.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I wonder too, a lot of times, as you mentioned, when physicians are operating, there's a lot of time pressure. And we try to have daily huddles. We try to do crisis management when there's turnovers in our organizations or just handoffs between shifts and those types of things. Are the concepts valuable in time-compressed circumstances, which I assume many negotiations can be as well?
The short answer is yes. And it's often the approach in a time-compressed situation to slow down, to get the information across. People really see it as a diversion, as a waste of time. I had a judge in a trial a long time ago, a guy named Michael McCasey. He used to say, we're going to delay things in order to save time. And then people would be like, oh, okay. We don't mind slowing down because it's going to save time over the long run. So get people to shift their thinking is a critical issue in a time-compressed situation.
That's correct. The tier one special operators have a phrase that I love to use: slow, smooth, smooth, fast. And if you just are deliberate, not necessarily even slow, just deliberate in what you do, it appears that you're expanding time, but at the end of the day, I think you actually save it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well said.
So what do you see in the future? Chris, you have many offerings out there, and Camilo, you've spoken a little bit to me about the consulting group that you formed. When did you start your consulting group, and what are your goals for that over the next 5 years or so?
You want to, Chris?
No, Camilo, please.
I opened the company a year ago, almost to the day. And really the motivation was the perfect storm of multiple things happening in my own life. I've been practicing for 45 years. Sooner or later, I will give up the practice of medicine. I have no plans for that, but my wife already threatened me that if I retire, I'm not going to spend the days at home. That's not allowed. So I got to find myself something to do. So with that in mind, say, well, how do I spend my days? What do I like to do? I like to teach. I'm an educator. I like to write. So the company, we publish books and we're creating courses. We do consulting. And what do I like to consult in? Things that straddle the business and medicine intersection, and risk management, quality improvement. Because I have a Lean Six Sigma certificate, I enjoy quality improvement. I think this is really good for organizations. And that's basically the motivation for it. It's a very green business, so to speak. It's a green company. We're still struggling, the first year, But I can tell you, for example, in 12 months, we published 12 books, almost a book a month. I mean, we have a book on bourbon, have a book on Missouri wine. We just published our first children's book, which is published for a friend of mine. So I write some of the books, I publish for other people. But I really, truly enjoy the written word. I think that communicating and sharing information is at the bottom of all of that, if that makes some sense.
Yes, absolutely. And Chris, how about you? Where do you see the Black Swan Group being 5 to 10 years down the road?
Well, upward, if you will. We like coaching. We're doing a lot more individualized coaching on people that are having a bigger impact in the world. So higher level entrepreneurs, higher level achievers, because everybody, if they haven't studied negotiation, are making the same mistakes. And in many cases, if you make a lot of money, if you're very wealthy, you don't realize you're doing it in spite of your communication ability, not because of it. And then also the people at very high levels are more interested. They'll leave money on the table. They're more relationship focused. And negotiation does not have a reputation for being relationship focused. I mean, negotiation is supposed to be win-lose, where the other guy loses. Or negotiation is supposed to be compromise, where you both lose. And people at the higher level don't want to make other people lose, and they don't want to lose either. And so then they have to see negotiation as a way to preserve relationships, create collaboration, long-term trusted relationships. And of course, then with the pyramid effect, the more people that you help get better at a higher level, then it really passes down through the rest of the economy. Leadership, business success through empathy, not through ruthlessness. And so we're very much focused in that direction. We're working on giving back a little bit more to the law enforcement community. Hostage negotiation appears to have lost its way a little bit, soft skills in law enforcement. They don't know why. They often know they're struggling. And then on global behind the scenes negotiations, there's much more desire for collaboration in the world, as opposed to I'm right and you're wrong based on my political system. And like very much the current presidential administration, a lot of love and hate them. If there aren't things about it that you like, you're not objective. If there aren't things about the current administration you don't like, you're not objective. But they're very much into a two-way street of fairness and economic prosperity for everybody. I got no problem with you getting more wealthy as long as you're not doing it at my expense or at somebody else's expense. And I see the world being much more open to that as well.
I was wondering if, and we're talking mainly to physician executives or physicians that are interested in pursuing executive roles, interested in taking the MBA, how would I know if I could benefit from this coaching? Are there certain pain signals, things that I might recognize, as it sounds like Camilo did? He recognized that his departure from an organization was a missed opportunity for him to learn this. Are there certain things that you've seen as consistent identifiers that would tell someone that they would be a great client for you and for the Black Swan Group?
Yeah, this is going to sound very arrogant. There really isn't anybody that can't improve their emotional intelligence and communication skills, myself included. The great thing about emotional intelligence is it's kind of an unlimited journey upward. So to say that you have all the emotional intelligence in the world or you've learned it all is you're closed-minded. But would you benefit from it? How coachable are you? I ran across a very prominent physician on an airplane about a year ago, and he's loud. And somebody on a plane I'm in business class, somebody on a plane turns around, looks at me and says, "Hey, I want to let you know that I made $1 million in one deal based on reading your book." And so this loud, annoying physician next to me says, "Why did he say he made $1 million?" And I said, well, okay. And so this is a senior guy, very senior guy. I said, what was the last book that you read to improve your soft skills, to get better, to get smarter? He goes, yeah, other than medical journals, I haven't read anything since college. And I said, well, I could tell you the name of my book, but if I do, you're not going to buy it. And if you buy it, you're not going to read it because you're not into reading books to get better. And he goes, Yeah, you're probably right. And so if you ain't into learning, you've decided that experience is the best teacher, therefore it's going to be your only teacher. And so you learn slower than everybody else. So one of my first questions to find out if somebody's a great coaching candidate was the last book that you read to get better at anything.
So it sounds like the quality of reading, it goes back to whether they're open-minded and whether they have enough emotional intelligence to realize that they still have things to learn.
Yeah, well, it's not that you still have things to learn, but how you get them is the critical issue. Did you pick up a book out of curiosity? Or are you going to only learn through experience, which is slow? And then what happens if you never run across anybody that can do it better than you? That means you never learn.
Camilo, how would you answer the same question? You've written a lot of books, you're creating courses and those types of things. What are the physicians that you're targeting who you feel would be the best consumers of that information?
I would suggest that at the present culture of medicine, the physicians that would benefit the most are those that have to realize something that Chris just said, that all of the answers to medical practice are not in the medical textbooks. That medical practice, if you look at it, is a subset of human behavior in general. That the roles of human behavior, including empathy, emotional IQ, and so on, apply to medical practice too. We don't live in medical practice in a detached parallel universe to where the natural rules of human behavior and communication don't exist. So you have to have that realization. You have to sort of get your head above the water of everything that you go on a daily basis, and then have a little bit of reflection, self-reflection, because for years, I keep telling the residents, I deal with a lot of medical students and residents and so on. The answer to most of our problems is in the mirror. It's not out the window. It's not pointing at other people, which is what the tendency that everybody has. Look in the mirror. What am I doing? What could I be doing? It's not even that you're doing something wrong, because you don't want to beat yourself. It's what could I be doing better than I'm doing now? Just because you became the chair of neurology or the chair of cardiology, you have not arrived. That's just a title. Unless you can deploy your skill set and improve it to fulfill that role, which I guarantee you, none of us have the skill set of any new position we acquire by promotion. You acquire the position because of the skill set of what you had before, but you don't have the experience and the skill set of your new promotion. And this is the question is, what am I going to do to fulfill this part of my destiny? And that requires introspection, reflection, and then say, well, what do I do next? Well, it just so happens that, in my humble opinion, the stuff that Chris Voss and the Black Swan Group teaches about negotiation has applicability in everything. Some of the details that he was talking about earlier, conceptually, is not different for physicians. Operationally, it might be because you may need different scenarios. So how do you apply it in this scenario, that scenario, that is different than from the real estate agent or from the attorney? But the principles are going to be the same. And I'm here to tell you, as a student of this group, that it works. I use it every day. And I am convinced. I am one of the biggest fans. And I will carry water from here to eternity if I could get my younger people, residents and medical students, to understand the importance of using these techniques for their own improvement. One thing that I want to put a plug in that we have not touched upon: physician burnout is real.
Yeah.
Physician burnout exists. It's a major problem that we're facing in medicine. And the organizations and the medical community has not come up with a real good answer to it. I think the answer to physician burnout needs to begin with realization of what is causing the burnout, and a root cause analysis, if you will, of what is causing that and how we approach it. Well, how we approach it is, first of all, how many times you have a bad interaction with anybody, with a patient, with a colleague, with an administrator, and you go home miserable. It ruins your day, it ruins your afternoon. What if we could translate all of those instances into something that is productive, that you go home feeling fulfilled, that you have accomplished something? Guess what happens? That burnout begins to shrink.
Right.
And I think that that's worthwhile for physicians, in my view.
I agree. If we could solve that problem, and we see it swing up and down. I mean, it got really bad during COVID, and now it's a little bit better. But most studies suggest that 30 to 40% of our physicians are still in that burnout. There's a bigger problem there that getting rid of COVID didn't solve. Well, I appreciate both of you being on the show. This has been a great conversation. I've learned a lot, and I know our audience is going to feel likewise. I just wonder, lastly, what is the best way, if people are interested in reaching out, finding out what other content you have to offer, what would be the best thing for me to include in our show notes in terms of allowing people to get in touch with you?
Well, think about what problem you want to solve to start with. And if it's more in line with how Camilo is approaching this, then start there. And that's probably your best starting point. Start with Camilo.
Okay.
If it's in general terms, after you've taken a look at what, think about, do you have a problem you want to solve now? Do you want to get better now? Or do you want to take a longer approach to the overall improvement? And what's your gateway? And your gateway through Camilo is your first starting point. If you're a physician, start there. You're going to feel a little bit more resonance, an understanding of the vernacular. You want to come to the Black Swan group after that, then come to our website, blackswanltd.com. But start with Camilo.
Great. Thanks, Chris.
That's very kind. Let me tell you about my journey also with Chris Voss, is that I also highly, highly recommend his masterclass. Because when I read the book, I'll tell you an interesting story. When I read his book, Never Split the Difference, I couldn't figure out what he meant by the late night DJ voice. I mean, for the life of me, I kept saying, this guy keeps talking about this. I don't know what he's talking about. If you watch his masterclass, you'll pick it up immediately because he uses it in an example there. And then I know exactly what he's talking about. And I think this is what you get going through their courses. They also have smaller courses that you can take online. You can start there, but we can help people any which way. We can go on our website. I'm in social media everywhere. Most of the time, if you find Chris Voss, you're going to find me right behind him because I'm writing his coattails and a lot of this stuff because I truly, truly believe in what he's doing. And we've applied it to our own work. And so Great. Either way, we're here for everybody.
Well, thank you. The one thing I forgot to ask is, how do you order the book, Strategic Conversations?
It's available in Amazon.
Okay.
It's available nearly anywhere.
I'll put a link to Amazon in here.
Yeah, sure.
And should have asked that at the very beginning when we started talking about it, so I apologize for that.
The other thing is that Chris just came up with, there's another book behind him that is called Fight Less, Win More, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that what it's called? Fight Less, Win More. Yeah. There's a follow-up sort of a workbook, if you will, for Never Split the Difference. That may be worthwhile people looking at it too.
And is that available on Amazon also, Chris?
It is, yeah. It's available for pre-order now. It's going to officially start being delivered on January 13th.
Perfect. Well, I'll make sure we include all this in the show notes for you. Again, thank both of you tremendously. All of my expectations, I really enjoyed this. It was so nice meeting you sort of in person, Chris, and getting a chance to talk with you.
Yeah, fun.
And Camilo, as always, it was good to see you again as well.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Chris, for making yourself available for this. And I hope you guys have great holidays and be safe. And if you need anything from me, you know where to find me.
Amen.
Great. Thank you. Well, that's a wrap on Pemba On Demand for today. Huge thanks to Chris Voss and Dr. Camilo Gomez for unpacking Strategic Conversations and the Black Swan Toolkit for physician leaders. If this helped, follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Castos, or YouTube, and leave a quick review so other physician execs can find us. Please review the show notes for contact information and resources. Until next time, lead with curiosity and tactical empathy. Thanks for listening to Pemba On Demand. We release new episodes bi-weekly, every other Thursday. You'll find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Castos. Hit follow or subscribe to us and add us to your library. If today helped you, please leave a quick review and share the show with a colleague. Questions or comments? Drop them on our YouTube channel, Pemba On Demand. For episode links and resources, check the show notes and visit tiny.utk.edu/Pemba On Demand, all one word. Take good care and keep becoming a bigger force for good in healthcare.